Hey, what's going on? So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about rejection sensitive dysphoria. This is a topic that I discussed, I don't remember, a few months back. I'll put a card for that video up here as well as down in the description. So rejection sensitive dysphoria is something that is very common, like near 100% common for people with ADHD. It is not a registered whatever thing in the DSM by the medical something or other, whatever, mabob. But if you talk to anybody in the ADHD community, and yes, there is an ADHD community, they will all agree that this is a real and legitimate thing. And it is something that is often kind of, can be misunderstood, thought that it's like got to do with like different personality disorder, like, you know, borderline personality disorder or bipolar or stuff like that. Like it can be misconstrued. It looks like depression sometimes. What's the one, rapid cycling bipolar or rapid cycling, whatever it's called. My brain's not working right, but it looks like that sometimes. So RSD is like, basically somebody could say something and not even mean it in a bad way, or they don't even have to say anything. I could just perceive that somebody thinks a certain way of me, and it triggers an RSD attack, basically, is what I kind of call it. And so what that does is sends me down, mentally. And so we just did a podcast episode on RSD, which will be released. Well, it'll be released before this is released. So I'll put a link for that down in the description. Our podcast that I do with my girlfriend, Trisha, is called Regular People Talking About Mental Health. And I believe it was episode 40 that we just recorded just a couple hours ago. And we talked about RSD was our topic. And RSD is something that touches my life like daily. It is so pervasive, and I never knew about it until pretty recently. And once I started learning about it, it started to make a whole lot of things make sense. I've been looking for a lot of answers as to like what's wrong with me for a very, very long time, and this checks off a lot of the boxes. I had always known that I had ADHD, but never really realized what that meant beyond the fact that I was fidgety and couldn't pay attention to things, and that like stereotypical boy with ADHD thing that everybody thinks of. Like when I was a kid, it was hyperactive and all that stuff. But as you become an adult, it kind of changes how it plays out in your life, or in my life, I should say. So this RSD thing it's terrible, right? So we, in the podcast, talked about an article in Attitude magazine, which is actually a website. It might be an actual magazine too, but I'll put a link for that in the description as well. It's attitudemag.com, I believe, and then the link for RSD in particular. And it talks about a lot of things. It talks about how we can be people pleasers, how we can just like retreat. Like a lot of times what I'll do is I just give up. Trisha says that I throw the baby out with the bathwater, and that I will, when I feel like I'm trying to do everything I can and it's just not working, eventually I'm just like, I'm done. All my efforts aren't working. I give up. And that happens more than I'd like to admit. But RSD is this thing that is, you can't, it's not like something that you could just wish away or that you can therapize away. The therapy, because ADHD is not based on it's not like it's based on some trauma. Surely trauma plays a part in how it plays out in my life. Like my childhood trauma, all this stuff that I'm totally unaware of, that I've dug up in therapy and things and learned so much about, that will affect my RSD to an extent, but even if I had done all the childhood trauma stuff, I'm not sure that this RSD thing would be totally gone, which kind of stinks, and this article talks about that a little bit, and it's hard to live with. It's hard to be triggered and like that, go from being totally fine to lash out, get very angry really quickly, and it's not fun. I don't enjoy it. I don't like being this way, but it's just part of who I am. And I think that, a lot of what we're doing on the podcast and what I'm trying to do on this channel is, on the podcast hugely, is to break the stigma behind mental health. And on this channel, it's been all about, trying to be true to myself and not just pretend like I'm who everybody else wants me to be, which is who I've been for most of my life, just like doing what everybody else thinks is the right thing for me to do, even if I, in my gut, don't believe that it is. So part of that is just being open about this stuff, my struggles, my real, what is really going on, because I know there's a lot of people out there that deal with this stuff and they think that they're alone. I thought for the longest time that I was alone until I started finding other people that go through the same stuff, that have these same feelings, this thing that you can't control, this feeling different all the time. And the more that I found more people like me, and I was able to find people that I could talk to about it, at least I didn't feel quite so alone. It doesn't stop it from happening. So anyway, I really like the episode we just did, so I encourage you to check that out. This is just like a little blip of my thoughts on RSD. Another thing real quickly is that RSD, we were talking about this in the podcast, and they talk about suicidal ideation. And that is something that in the podcast we were talking about, Trisha doesn't have this thing that I have where my negative brain goes so quickly to, I should just not be here anymore. It's my life is a whole pointless waste and I should just take myself out. And I've never tried it. I've never had serious attempts at suicide, but it is one of those things that for some reason when I get triggered, I dive so deep so fast. And that I've found out is in part related to RSD. This dysphoria is kind of like an exaggerated, I don't even know how to describe it. Well, you could probably look it up. Actually, let's look it up. Phone. Oh, let's see here. Go on the fancy dancy Google machine. Actually, here's the Attitude magazine review right here, or article. So according to that article that I was just talking about, dysphoria is Greek for difficult to bear. And on dictionary.com, dysphoria is a state of dissatisfaction, anxiety, restlessness, or fidgeting. So that's interesting. But anyway, so yeah, it's this, and it comes out of nowhere and it can go away out of nowhere. It doesn't really make sense. I've suffered from depression a lot throughout my life, and depression and this RSD thing look kind of very similar, and they can be, when you're telling a doctor your symptoms, they don't know. It could be RSD, it could be depression, it could be ADHD, it could be bipolar, it could be multiple personality disorder. I mean, there's so many things that a lot of the symptoms are very similar. So it's really hard to diagnose any of this stuff in the medical community. And a lot of it, honestly, I think is really doing research on your own and kind of self-diagnosing. Obviously, you can't self-medicate. That's not good to do. I've tried that. It doesn't work very well, at least not for me. But the things that I've gone to with my and I'm not saying self-diagnose and oh, this is my thing, and whatever. I'm saying do research, go to your doctor with your research and say, this is what I've learned, this is what I think, and see what they say. Go to your therapist and say, this is what I've learned, what do you think? And it's got to be a team effort because they can only do so much. They're not inside your brain, they're not inside your body, they don't know what you're going through. And you have to advocate for yourself. And the more that I learn about and the more that Trisha learns about and she watches me go through these things, the more clear to her as an outsider it is that this makes more sense than any of the other things that doctors and therapists have diagnosed me as. ADHD and rejection sensitive dysphoria like keep coming out on top for like answering a lot of questions, checking a lot of boxes. And it might not be that way for you. You might be watching this and going, oh, he's just a baby or whatever. And you know, it talks about that in that article that people think that we're just weak or something. And it's not that we're weak. It's just this, something's different in our brains, the way we're wired. And it's okay. You know, it's hard for me to sometimes realize that I'm different. And some days I kick myself for it and wish that I wasn't this way. But I think on a lot of days, I'm okay with who I am, and I like knowing that by doing this kind of stuff, that I'm sharing my experience, and maybe one person out there will see it, and there might be, you know, if 100 people watch this, and one person gets something out of this, and the other 99 people don't, I need to tell myself that I helped one person, right? So that's why I do this stuff, and yeah, so again, hopefully it helped you. And if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up down below. It helps it just get triggered into the YouTube algorithm and all that. And subscribe to the channel if you're interested in this stuff. I do a whole bunch of different types of videos on this channel. I do a lot of these talking head things as well as some meditation-y type stuff and some other things. So subscribe to the channel and leave me a comment. Please let me know what you think about ADHD and RSD and whatever else you got going on. Let's chat down there. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.